This guy used to get angry all the time. I used to have a terrible, terrible temper with a fuse about this short. This is boom, yo, blah, 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 blah. Mainly when I was younger. And then with help, I learned to control it. Did I get rid of it? No. Can you get rid of it? I don't know. But everything that I've learned over the years is it's not really healthy, nor is it realistic to think that you can get rid of your anger. What you can do is learn to not let it take over your life, which is essentially what I did. And it took a long time, and I'm still working on it. It's not something that you just do and you're like, "Huh, I've got it." Cruise control. It is something that you constantly have to work on. And it has to be something that you want to work on. You have to go, you know what? I don't want to get angry. I don't want to be angry all the time. It hurts me. It makes me feel terrible. It hurts the people that I love around me. It doesn't help me think rationally when I need to think rationally. And it's just something that you don't want controlling. It's like this poison in your mind. And I don't think it's healthy based on all the psychology books and everything else that I've read that you try to oppress it, that you think that you can get rid of it. These people are like chasing happiness. I'm just going to be happy all the time. Unrealistic, unless you're on a lot of medication. You know what I mean? If you're on a lot of medication, yeah, maybe, but that's got a whole set of different problems. So I'm going to go back and tell you exactly how I did this and what worked for me. Now, keep in mind, just like any of my other videos, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not here to push what I've learned onto you. I'm simply sharing an experience in my life that helped me grow and become a better person as far as I'm concerned. So you may have a different number like, no, I don't think so. I think you should be angry, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you are like that, and that's fine. I'm not here to judge you or anything like that. If you are angry, I don't even know if what happened to me and what I did to control it would work for you. We're all different. We've all had different experiences and we're all capable of different things. So, and if you're curious and you're like, oh, maybe I will try it, then, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Don't get frustrated with it though. The simple fact that if any of you are like, hey, maybe I could work on it is a great thing to contemplate, to reflect on. So where did my anger come from? It's pretty obvious if you know my past, where that comes from. And I've alluded to this before in other videos. Whereas my youth, my childhood was not exactly stellar. It wasn't great. I had a number of stepfathers. Three of them, no, two of them, no, I was going to exaggerate. Two of them are no longer with us. One was due to narcotics and the other one due to, and I'm just going to be honest with you, due to suicide. A lot of trauma in their heads, obviously, a lot of issues. But the one that massively contributed to my anger and my, less than stellar childhood is still here. And I'm going to jump to the end there. I don't have any anger or hatred towards that person anymore. And this is a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. And it's not necessarily something that maybe everyone can do or is capable of doing. I did it, but I didn't do it for that person. I did that for myself. And I'll get into that as well, because it's kind of important. So my childhood, obviously, without going into details, because I don't want to go into it, and if I talk about it, there's a good chance that I'll start blubbering because I'm very sensitive. And it was a very traumatic, obviously, part of my life. I don't hide it. I just don't want to cry in front of like, oh, this guy's crying again. There's Niels. And then this happened and it was beautiful. Blah. You know what I mean? We get it. And that inevitably that's going to happen in something. Maybe it even happens in this. I don't know, because I don't know where this is going. So just bear with me. So yeah, when I was younger, at the age of 16, I was removed from my home by Children's Aid. Okay, so it was bad enough that I was pulled forcibly from my home and made to live with my father, who I had never lived with before. My parents were divorced by the time I was 1 year old. So, I'd never lived with them. He never raised me either. So it was very, for him, it was a learning experience for me. But what happened was I had so much anger because of that, because of my terrible youth. I hated myself. I had so much anger just from, I guess, being exposed to that level of hatred and violence, naturally spills over. And everything that I've read, and you probably, if any of you have a spouse, partner, maybe you are, or someone, a parent that is a psychologist, psychiatrist, you may be very well aware that a lot of this sort of childhood trauma can spill over into your adulthood, and in a repetitive cycle. And then you start doing that to your kids, and those kids do it to their kids. So, and I was very aware of this. So at the age of 16, that's what happened. Now, it wasn't until, I don't know, I would say 2 years later. So after I had moved, I took it upon myself. I'm like, oh, this is a new opportunity, because up until that point, I was filled with anger. I did rage a lot. It's not that I went out and hurt little fluffy bunnies. I'm like, you little bunny, I hate life. I wasn't like a psychopath. I was just filled with a lot of anger. I didn't really hurt anyone. I didn't try and stab anyone. I was just not enjoying life. And it wasn't necessarily depression. It was just rage. It was just a hate, an indifference to life, which is a terrible thing. So when I was forced, even though I didn't like it, and I can get into that some other time, but I don't know if I'd get through the video without blubbering. That's just the way I am, people. So when I went there, I took it upon myself. I'm like, this is an opportunity where these new people, this new neighborhood, these new potential friends, they don't know who I was. They don't know my past. They don't know that I am or was filled with anger and what happened. So I put a huge amount of effort into not exposing that side of me, basically to the end of my high school, university, even the Air Force. I still had it in me. But when I went there, I knew I was still dealing with it. It was still exhausting, although I never really showed it. And I was able to turn it around somewhat, at least externally. So I went from being very reclusive, very introverted, to the complete opposite. I was outgoing. I was spontaneous. I made a crap load more friends, like a lot of friends. And one of my good friends that I made is still, one of my best friends that I go up to his cottage every year. So it was very, very meaningful to me. But I still had to, and it was exhausting. I still had to control it a lot. So when I was visiting family back in Mississauga, so when I moved, I originally was in Mississauga, Toronto. I grew up in Toronto, Mississauga, and Mississauga is right beside Toronto. If you're wondering geographically, obviously, majority of you are from the U.S. So Toronto, Ontario, right beside it. It was like one of those giant megalopolises. You couldn't even tell if you were driving from one city to the next because it was just continuous. So that's what it kind of was. And when I moved, when I came back, because I was still dealing with it and it was still exhausting for me, and I was just like, I'm making it so far. Oh, and what I was going to say, in my senior year in high school, I was voted funniest guy in the whole school, in the entire school. I'm not saying I'm funny now, because life has a way of kicking you right in the gonads there, and suddenly you don't feel. I still love watching comedies. I love laughing. I think for me it was like such great therapy. But I used to do improv and stand up and all sorts of crazy stuff. Like, I completely flipped it, but I still had a lot of anger in me. It was like, I've heard this say before, and I don't mean to rip off someone, but like my dark passenger. Oh no, don't say that. That's Dexter. Cancel that. That guy's a psychopath. It wasn't a dark passenger. Nothing like that. Don't ignore that. It was something in me anyway. I felt like this constant poison that I had to keep sweeping under the carpet. I wasn't dealing with it. I just didn't let it come out. And so it stayed with me. Wanting to get rid of that, knowing that it was still there, knowing that it was just exhausting for me. When I visited family, and this was like before the internet, I decided to go to the Mississauga branch near Square One, the library. I don't even know if it's still there. Do people still go to libraries, or is it all on the internet? I don't know. I know we have a library here, but I don't usually see anyone going in there. So I went in there and I looked up psychology books on how to control my anger, how to get rid of anger, because I thought I could just get rid of it. I thought that's what I need to do. I need to get rid of it. I need to get out because it's going to ruin my life. And I don't want to be like that monster that ruined my life. So I read them. I read 3 books, and I hated, I shouldn't say hate now, but I hated reading. Absolutely hated reading. Like, it was just a chore. But because I was so desperate to get rid of that anger inside me, my dark passenger, when I wanted to get rid of it, I read 3 psychology books, and they were dry and everything like that, but I wanted to get rid of it. And what happened was, 2 out of the 3 constantly made reference to philosophies or approaches that were part of the Buddhist philosophy, the Buddhist way. Obviously, I'm assuming most of you know what Buddhism is. You see, when I say Buddhism, you think of the big Buddha, or you think of the Dalai Lama, right? People here, which is Tibetan Buddhism. And I'm gonna preface this too, because I've experienced this before. If any of you are religious, if you're Muslim, if you're Christian, if you're Jewish, if you're Hindu, and the idea of talking about another religion makes you feel, I guess, somewhat uncomfortable, I'm not pushing this on you. I am not a Buddhist, nor do I practice Buddhism. Now, I did in the past for a little bit, because and I'll try to get into that without making this 3 million hours long. I did slightly get into a phase where it was very pervasive in my life, and I was very ultra focused on it. But right now, as it stands, I'm not a Buddhist. I don't practice Buddhism. I was raised Christian. I went to Sunday school. I went to church every Sunday. I went to youth group till I was 13. And do I consider myself Christian at this point? No, I'm more agnostic, not atheist. I don't say that there's no God. And if you are, that's cool. Like, I don't care what religion you are, what faith you are, whatever. And if you're atheist, cool. I don't judge anyone. I really don't. It's not a concern of mine. My concern is my own spirituality, my own well-being, to take care of my mind. Because until I can do that, I can't help other people. I can't spread happiness and make other people joyful. At least that's what I've learned over the years. So again, raised Christian, not really Christian. I'm agnostic. I don't know if there is. I don't have faith, or enough faith, that it's possible for me at this time in my life. Who knows? It could change. It definitely can change. Now, I think typically people, as they get older, they tend to find God. It's never been lost. I don't know. Based on my youth and based on what's happened, it was hard for me to put faith into something that's supposed to be about love and compassion while I was suffering in a living hell. I hope that makes sense. So anyway, I wasn't seeking another religion. I wasn't seeking another faith. I wasn't trying to be Buddhist. I just happened to read 3 psychology books, and 2 of them constantly, completely different authors, constantly were making references to Buddhism. And I thought, okay, well, at that time, I was like, well, that's interesting, because I didn't know anything about Buddhism. But a little bit of what I read sort of helped me deal with it in the beginning. So I was like, okay, well, don't ignore it. It was like rules like, don't let it fester, don't sweep it under the carpet, which is what I was doing, and don't focus on it. Don't be so hyper. Like when you're angry, I'm like, yeah, I'm really angry, and you don't let it go. And sorry, you don't let it go, and you just, the more you focus on it without trying to sort of like calm yourself down, the worse it gets. You get all heated up, you get all crazed up. And if you react in the moment, chances are you're going to say or do something that's not really rational. It's not really what you want to do, but you're all heated up. And so I was aware of those rules. And for the most part, I tried to implement them, and to the best of my ability, which I was somewhat successful. Because as I said, I ended up being like, I was like, oh, what an amazing thing. My grades all went up because I was terrible in school prior. I didn't want to do homework because I didn't want to be in the house. I needed to get out of the house as much as possible. So academically, I felt stupid. I felt dumb because my grades were bad. But, looking back, I was just wanted to get out of the house. So in the opportunity when I moved and I was able to reinvent myself, suddenly all my marks went up to the point where I started tutoring people in math. I was going to be a math teacher. I went to university before I dropped out like an idiot for different reasons. Another vlog. Stay tuned. Maybe we'll talk about that. That one's a little bit personal, but who knows? I don't, sometimes I share that stuff. And again, voted the happiest person. So I was able to feel changes, meaningful changes. And it wasn't until years later when I met Pam, who's now my wife, but at the time, obviously, was just my girlfriend. I say just, but I fell in love with her pretty fast. I would say we equally fell in love pretty quickly. So I had met her at Oktoberfest. It was through work. I'm like, oh, I got this friend. She's single, blah, blah, blah. So I went down for, I don't know if you guys know Oktoberfest, bratwurst and beers. So I met her there, and I saw this person who, and she was like super friendly. She said hi and everything like that. And we chatted, but there was a whole bunch of other girls there. And I just remember that night. And I remember that night and watching her. She was just like this little spark of energy floating all over the place, going to get beers, going out and drinking, or not drinking, well, obviously drinking. And we're like, beers. I don't drink it. And dancing. And she would come back to check in on the group and everything because we were her ride. And she just had this spark of life. And even though I really didn't even hang out with her most of the night, I was constantly like watching her. In fact, most of the night I spent dancing with all of her friends. They were always the ones, and I didn't really care. It was fine. There was like 3 or 4 other girls, and I was dancing with them all night. But as I was dancing, I'm like, oh yeah, and I'm kind of like looking around. I'm like, oh, there she is, and and that was it. That was the interaction. And then it was like a week or so later, I started emailing her. So this was early days of the internet, and we emailed each other back and forth for I don't even know how long, like quite a long time. Lots of emails, and she's actually kept all the emails as well and printed them out. But we got to know each other by opening up and talking about life. And so the next time we met, the sparks were like instant. I get emotional too. They were instantly flying. So the connection was strong. We ended up getting married fairly quickly. Not like right away. We moved in together. We lived together. We lived with my mother at first, and then we moved in with my best friend Jeff, the high school friend who has the cottage, and we lived with them for a while. And then it got to the point where we're like, you know what? I think we obviously got to the point where we want to get married, and it was as soon as also when we were going to get married, it was, well, we're going to get married, and not to get into any details because it's not my business to do so. And I don't think she would mind anyway, but we weren't sure how easily or if she was going to be able to get pregnant. Evidently, we were both very wrong because it was by the end of the month. And we had already agreed to be engaged. And then all of a sudden we're like, uh-oh, did you hear that? Was it a shotgun? Shotgun marriage, baby. But it was like, because we didn't know, we were like, oh, well, whatever. Like we both knew we wanted a family. The bottom line is this: my mind was already in the headspace of, I love this woman. I think I'm going to marry her. Those stupid flies from the springtime. What are you going to do? Hopefully you guys didn't see that. Maybe you did. Go away. There's no flies around here. I knew in my heart that this is something, and it wasn't, this was before I even proposed to her, or I shouldn't say I proposed because that's a terrible story, which maybe I can share later. Anyway, so before that happened, I knew that I wanted to do that, but I was also very aware that I still had this anger in me, and it scared me. It scared me because the last thing that I wanted to do was to repeat the cycle. I had already read the psychology books. I was already aware that sometimes this happens very commonly in society, where people that are abused tend to abuse their kids when they're older. And it's this vicious cycle. And maybe you're a victim of this as well. And maybe you're doing the same thing. And maybe you feel terrible about it. And I'm going to talk about this too. This is important before I digress even further and go back to it. A key point in this: if you are one of those people, if you do have anger and you want to get rid of it, but you just can't, if you cannot have compassion for yourself, if you cannot feel empathy and understand and not feel sorry, but look at yourself honestly, because this is hard for a lot of people to have a lot of love for themselves. You can have love for your friends, love for your family, and for some people, it's very hard to love themselves. You have to have that compassion. You have to want to heal yourself in order to get better. You have to understand that sometimes, I'm not saying that we condone it. We don't say it's okay when you do mean things. We don't say, oh, it's okay because of your past. But what you do is you try and understand, you have compassion for the fact, like, I'm like this because this happened to me. I'm like this because of this, this, and this, and because I'm human. And when you understand and you allow yourself to say, okay, well, it's not necessarily directly my fault. I'm a result of my environment, but you can change. But you have to be able to basically say, forgive yourself and say, all right, I did that. I didn't look into it. I didn't try and control it. I thought I was lost. I didn't know I could get rid of it. It was a terrible past. I want to heal. Look at yourself as a kid. Don't look at yourself as an adult. Think of you as a child. Think of you as a child. If you were to go back and tell your child self, you're going to yell at them for being angry, or you're going to be like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, I understand why you're angry. You don't have to be angry. You're okay. You deserve to be happy. You deserve it, because this is what I had to do. Okay, so anyway, I went back and I ended up, rather than getting more psychology books, because the psychology was constantly 2 out of the 3, and maybe it was just coincidence, but it did turn my life around. So 2 out of the 3, and I'm like, okay, rather than psychology books, I'm going to get some books on Buddhism, and I'm going to start reading them. And the very first book that I had was Lama Suryadas, Awakening the Buddha Within. And the reason why I know that title is because it was the very first book on Buddhism that I read. And it was like a spark. It was a spark. It was a catalyst. And remember, I was raised Christian, and nothing in there. In fact, the Lama is teacher. Lama Suryadas, if you look him up, and I'm sure I'm saying his name wrong, but I don't really care. He's actually a Jewish Buddhist, or a Jewish teacher. So he was still Jewish, and he still went to, what is it, synagogue? Is that what it is? Pardon my ignorance if that's wrong. Which is the whole point and why I wanted to say, listen, I'm not pushing Buddhism on anyone. If you're Christian, if you're Muslim, if you're Hindu, Jewish, whatever. The reality is that primitive core Buddhism, the teachings of it, have nothing to do with the existence or non-existence of God. They can actually easily go hand in hand with any of the religions. And it's really the only religion that can. It's called a religion, but it's more like an instruction booklet, a practical instruction booklet. And I'm not talking about Tibetan Buddhism. That I'll talk about that, because most of my books are Tibetan Buddhism. But the core teachings from the Indian. So what is it? Gautama. I can't even remember his name now. See, I told you I'm not a really good Buddhist. But he was an Indian prince, a person. He wasn't a prophet. He wasn't the son of God. He wasn't a saint or anything like that. He was literally just a man. And people that, when you see people worshiping Buddha, I say, and that's the wrong word, is they don't worship him. They look up to him for guidance because he was a teacher, because he found a way to purge himself of this suffering and this hatred that was in everyone. Because of that, they look up to it. So Buddhists look up to him. They don't pray to him. He has no powers. He's not in this plane. He was just a man who found a way. It's like having a statue of Galileo or something because you really look up to him and you want him as inspiration. That's essentially what it is. So I read a ton of books. And what happened was I focused on some of the core teachings, which was mindfulness and compassion. These are 2 of, like, I would say at least 4 different aspects of Buddhism, of philosophy. And a lot of times modern psychology utilizes a lot of the teachings. And remember, Buddhism has been around for about 4,000 years, a long, 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 long time. It is not prevalent in today's culture. I think Christianity is the number 1, then Muslim, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't know the exact statistics. So anyway, I started reading these things, and it started guiding me, and it started allowing me to reflect. So you have to do a lot of meditation, which is really just calming your mind. It's nothing like, oh, bling, bling. What you're trying to do is and it's very, very difficult. And I don't do it anymore because it's exhausting. And I probably could benefit from it 100%. Not could. I know I would benefit from it. Anyone would. But what you do is you sit there and you concentrate on your breathing and you try and calm your mind. Your mind is going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. You think that you're relaxed. Try doing this. Try sitting on the ground, sitting up, closing your eyes, and breathing, and concentrating on what you're thinking about. What's the thoughts that are going in your mind, like anything. Or like, I'm itchy. Or, oh, what am I going to do later? You have to basically, whenever that happens, you go, oh, I'm thinking. When any idea or any thought pops in your mind, you just label it. It's like a sticky note. You're like, oh, I'm thinking about something. Don't worry about what you're thinking about. Just know that you're thinking and immediately let it go. And it's not easy to do in the beginning, but you gradually, through practice, you learn to do it until your mind is very, very still. And that is, you're just breathing. You have no thoughts coming in or out. And it's very calming. It's one of the most relaxing things I've ever done in my entire life. And if I'm being brutally honest, it was only at one point, one time in all the times that I've been practicing this and reading, one moment one single moment where where my mind was completely at ease. And it was almost like a drug when I came out of it. I was like, oh my God, that was the most relaxing thing ever. And then you make the error of trying to chase it, which is bad because you can't do that. Once your mind's in there, you're like trying to forcibly relax your mind, and doing so are thoughts. When you're trying to do something on purpose, you're thinking. And so it's so counterproductive. But anyway, the thing that happened was through compassion. So number one was the anger that I had towards my stepfathers, or whatever it was, and that childhood and the trauma there. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how to get rid of that. I don't know if I can get rid of that. It was terrible. Anytime I think about it, it's painful. It's disturbing. So I wanted to work on myself first, because that's a lot of the teachings is, listen, you can't spread happiness, truly can't spread love, happiness, and joy to other people if you don't have it yourself. If you can't manifest it in yourself, if you can't love yourself and be truly, be okay, how can you possibly show love? It's not that you're teaching it, but how can you convey that love to other people if you can't do it for yourself? Now it's easier to do that, but that has to pervade everywhere about you. And when it does, then your loved ones and your friends feel it more. So I had to work on myself. And the way I did that is through mindfulness. When I said mindfulness and compassion, mindfulness is trying to put a lot of energy into being aware of what you're saying, what you're doing, what you're thinking, everything like that. Everything that you're doing in life, whether it's at your job, whether it's an interaction with your friends, whether it's what you're eating, you are not just thinking about, oh, what am I doing tomorrow as you're shoveling food in? And you're like, okay, I'm eating this food. I'm going to enjoy this meal. I'm sitting with my family. I'm going to enjoy my time with my family. I'm not going to be on my phone. I'm not going to be thinking about tomorrow. I'm going to be present with them. You might hear that a lot too. Present. Being in the present moment, not in the past. You're not thinking about the past. You're not thinking about the future. You're being there with those people. And that's part of being mindful. Just being aware of the situation and not judging it. It is what it is. Whatever's happening, you're not there to judge. It's just that's the way it is. The other part is compassion. And the compassion comes for yourself. What happened was I look back myself, and I'm going to try and do this without getting overwhelmed. I'm going to try and calm down. I look back as a child. If I look at someone a child was suffering, you don't yell at them. If they're reacting and that if you knew that they were in a very bad relationship and their parents were very abusive or whatever the case may be, and you see that kid suffering and they're angry and they're sad, you're not going to blame that child. You're going to try and comfort that child, right? Because they're innocent. They don't know what they're doing. They're a victim of their environment. And so I go back and I look at myself. I'm like, of course I was like that. Of course I had anger. Of course it wasn't great. And so I was able to forgive myself of that anger. And that's an important thing. And then through compassion and through understanding. So there's in Buddhism, there's I think the Four Noble Truths. I might actually get these wrong because I honestly have not looked at this for many, many years. I've read many, many books and studied it for a long time. The Four Noble Truths is that there is suffering, that suffering is caused by ignorance, that there is a way to eliminate suffering, and the way to eliminate suffering is through what's called the Eightfold Path. I can't believe I actually remember that. I think that's right. If you're a Buddhist, you were like, yeah, that's pretty good. And the Eightfold Path is basically a set of 8 instructions to make sure that you're able to eliminate ignorance. So you'll hear this a lot. You hear me when I'm talking about current topics and other vlogs and other things, because it's so much a part of me. That's how I approach everything. I don't approach it black and white. I never do that. I try and look at it as neutral. I can't help it because that's what I've trained myself to do. So those are the basically it's ignorance. And my anger towards my stepfathers and my hatred and all that stuff that I was allowing that terrible environment and situation to manifest itself in me. I allowed that because what happened was all I can say is it's ignorance. So this is compassion. So lack of compassion. I know I'm all over the place. I'm trying to get my mindset on this. It's not something that I've actually really ever spoken about in this detail ever in my life. So bear with me, people. I was able to forgive my stepfather because the way I look back was, all right, I don't like anger. I know how it made me feel. I was desperate to get it out because I wanted, and I had a taste of laughter and friendship and love and being the funny guy and getting good marks. And I could see the part of life. And it was more and more part of my life, and this love and finding my wife and feeling the loves for her and knowing that I wanted a family. And I'm like, oh, like I want to get rid of that. How do I do that? And then I took a long time. This was not easy by any, it wasn't just like, oh, I'll just decide to do this today and I'll fix this problem. You know what I mean? It's not like a leaky faucet. I'm like, done. So I started reflecting a lot on my stepfather. And basically what happened was I felt compassion for him. I felt sad for him. I felt empathy for him. This is something that my wife and a lot of people will struggle to accept as well. Knowing my past, she's like, no, no, I'm not going to forgive him. So I forgave him. I've forgiven him. I have no hatred. I have zero hatred and anger towards him because what I see and what when I reflect on it is outside of like, okay, that was me. I was part of it. But as a human being, I look at him and I say, how terrible it is. How terrible it is to wake up every morning and instead of being, at worst neutral, best being happy, like, hey, you know what? Today's going to be a good day. I can't wait to do this. Can't wait to do this. Oh, I got my buddies here. I'm going to the cottage, or I'm going here. I'm going to go to the store. I'm going to get a new record, or I'm doing this. I'm going to have a great lunch. Sun shining today. This is great. Imagine, for me, it was like, imagine waking up every morning being filled with so much hatred, rage, anger, whatever you want to call it, that you couldn't really enjoy these aspects of life. They were just things that happened. And you were so, like, I could see when I reflect back, I could see that he was trying to do things that made him happy, but they just always ended up frustrating him or raging him. And I ended up having like sadness for him. It made me feel sad that every day he woke up with that rage in him, with that anger in him. And so my compassion was was that his whole life, as far as I know, from start to finish, was terrible, was filled with rage and anger. He didn't get to experience life. He didn't have the opportunity that I did at the age of 16 to transform it, to be nurtured in a different way. Now I took it upon myself a lot of this for myself to do it, which isn't always the case. Most people don't. I should say most because I don't have statistics. A lot of people that I know, or a lot of things that I've read, is people don't seek that. And so all I would say is, if you're suffering from anger, hatred, or anything like that, I'm not saying go and read Buddhist books. Maybe start with some psychology books. Maybe go and get some therapy. But also change the way that you think. Be forgiving for yourself. Understand that the child in you didn't have much of a choice. You were a child, but you're an adult now and you have the ability. Now, for those of you that are struggling with, the forgiveness part, and a lot of people have a problem with this. When you forgive someone, it's not about condoning what they're doing. It's not saying it's okay what they did. Oh, well, he was filled with anger. What a terrible life. Like, because I had compassion and I still have compassion for him. What a terrible life that he had. It's okay that he did. No, it's not okay. That's not what I'm saying either. It's not okay what they're doing. It's the same thing when you see other people. I'm not even going to get into this because this is a dicey one, especially for my American friends. But I can look outside of our country. I can look outside of the friends of the allies. I can see their anger. I can see their frustration. And I don't mention this and I don't share this very often, but I don't condone them with the same amount of hatred that the West does. And it's not that I condone it, it's not that I think it's okay, but I feel compassion. I feel, well, how bad of a life do you have? Like, that this is the solution, that you think this is the right way to be, to have that much hatred for another human being. And my compassion part of me feels sad for them. I feel bad. It doesn't mean that I think that what they're doing is okay. Don't get me wrong. But that's the way that I've been trained to do it. So anyway, I've long ago been able to purge myself of that hatred and have more compassion for him. But it's almost a quasi selfish act because I wasn't doing it necessarily. It happened, but I wasn't doing it for him. I was doing it for myself so that I could let that go, so that I could let go of that hatred and that anger that was just constantly clinging into me. Every time I thought about it, every time I thought about my youth, every time I thought about that individual, it would bring up terrible feelings. I can honestly think about it now in detail. I can think about things that happened and it doesn't move me in the same way. I get overwhelmed with emotion when I talk about it because I see the little boy again, the little Niels, little 8-year-old, 10-year-old Niels, in that situation. He didn't know any better, and he didn't know how to deal with it, and he didn't talk to anybody about it. So it makes me sad for that aspect. And there's nothing I can do about that. You know what I mean? Like it moves me from a compassionate standpoint. I wish that I didn't suffer. I'm looking back as a different person. It's a weird way to look at it, but anyway. So that's how I was able to more or less get rid of my anger. So what I do now, and does that mean that I'm like puppy dogs and unicorns and rainbows all the time? No, I still have a temper. I still get angry. What I do now, though, because of all these years, and honestly, the more I talk about it, the more I think I could probably read some more uh, Buddhist books, or at least meditate more. Maybe not reading more, because I've read so many. I don't think I would gain anything else from it, honestly, other than reflecting and meditating and making sure that I can manifest the same ideas. What was I even saying? Oh my goodness, I digressed a little bit. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So, tangents all over the place. Focus, man, focus. So I don't let my anger I don't fester in it. I don't like really concentrate. If I get mad, I don't go, oh, I'm really mad and I'm gonna stay mad and I keep going out mad. I'm able, because of over years, I'm able to recognize that I'm getting angry, recognize that I'm getting mad very, very quickly. That doesn't mean that I'm getting able to get rid of it, but I'm able to remove myself. I know that in that moment of rage and that anger, that if I'm going to say something or do something, it's probably not going to be the right thing or the optimal thing to say, something that I'm going to regret and that I'm going to have to apologize, which I do. If you talk to anyone, any of my boys or my wife, when I do say things, because I'm human like anyone else, it doesn't take me very long. I go in, I reflect, I'm like, oh my goodness, like I shouldn't have done that. That wasn't, even if I don't think that they're right, even if, you know what I mean, right or wrong, it doesn't matter about right or wrong. I love them. I don't want to spread misery to them. Even if we disagree, I don't want to be the person that brings them down just because we have a disagreement, just because we're not seeing things, or maybe there's miscommunication. So I put a tremendous amount of effort into not sweeping under the carpet, not letting it fester, but basically concentrating or thinking about it head on. So I don't ignore it. I don't sweep it under the carpet. I'm like, okay, why am I angry? What is that really fair? Should I be like that? And sometimes if I can't rationalize in my head, I know that I'm still a little bit hot. So I just sit there and I breathe and I try and calm down. I try and distract myself. Then I think about it. I don't ignore it. And I don't let my ego hold on to it and say, no, you're right. You were right to be angry. And you can't stop that. So don't feel bad. If that happens to you, that's completely normal. What I'm saying is learn to recognize that you're doing it. Learn to recognize that you're doing it. Whether you're right or wrong is irrelevant. The fact is, you don't want to react when you're angry. You don't want to spread that. You want love. You don't want someone who's angry with you. You want them to be calm and think about it after and talk to you. So you should be doing the same thing. But don't be hard on yourself when you're angry. It is completely normal. I don't believe that you can get rid of it. It's not something that I think you can really get rid of, as I said in the beginning. So that's basically more or less how I dealt with it. And over the years, I've read many, many books. The big problem is what I'll tell you here. If you have faith, if you're Christian, and I'll wrap it up with this: if you're Christian, Muslim, or even atheist, whatever it is, and you're like, okay, the philosophies of Buddhism sounds interesting. Be aware that the vast majority of the books and the literature here available in the West is Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism, and if you practice Tibetan Buddhism, I'm not, again, like any other religion, fantastic. I'm happy for you. I'm just giving a warning to other people. Tibetan Buddhism, because I had to do this myself, is not core or primitive Buddhism, meaning the basic psychological instruction manual of how to be good. They have, for a lack of a better word, evolved into a type of Buddhism. They are not primitive Buddhism. They are They are a transformation of Buddhism, and they have deities and they have very elaborate rituals. They believe in reincarnation, aka the Dalai Lama, who's just the same person over and over again. So they believe in reincarnation. They have these semi-demigods and stuff like that. If you're going to read it, just what I would say is just ignore that stuff. If it resonates with you and you like that stuff, and spiritually you're open to it, then go at it. I'm just saying, for those of you that don't like it, don't let it ruin the core teachings, because the teachings are still there. The instructions of how to eliminate ignorance in you, how to manifest more neutral compassion to other people, to rid yourself of this hatred and anger you have for other people, because it happens. The instructions are there. And some books are much better than others. I don't know if that book that I mentioned is necessarily good for everyone, or if it's the best book to start with, because it just happened to be the first book that I read, which again was Awakening the Buddha Within by Lama Surya or Surya Das. I don't know. I can't remember the spelling. Trust me, if you see it, you'll be in there. So if any of you read it, let me know. If you ever touch upon it, if any of you are Buddhist, let me know. And I'm particularly interested if any of you are Christian, Muslim, or anything else, and you adhere to Buddhist philosophies. I think that would be much more rare. I think the chances of that is pretty slim. But just be aware, those are teachings of Tibetan Buddhism. You don't have to follow them, but the instructions and the gold is in there. You just kind of have to dig through it. So that's how I got rid of anger in myself. Started as psychology, sort of bled into instructions from Buddhism. I am not a Buddhist. I do not follow Buddhism. I follow a lot of the core teachings of primitive Buddhism, the more instructional aspects of it. And you gotta forgive yourself. You have to have compassion and don't be so hard on yourself when you do things that isn't where you want to be. Don't be mad at yourself for being mad. You know what I mean? Just recognize it, know that you're doing that, but don't let it fester. Don't concentrate on it, and don't sweep it under the rug. It's uncomfortable to deal with sometimes, but you get better at it, and then it just becomes second nature. And in terms of someone that you have hatred towards, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that you can do it, but it's for yourself. I know it seems like a counterproductive thing, but having compassion and understanding, oh, that person is suffering. This is how. You don't have to be okay with what they did. You're not saying that. You're not condoning that. You're not saying it's okay for people to do bad things. What you're saying is, I understand. Maybe if I went through exactly what they went through as a human being, I would have the same anger. And so if you think about it from that perspective, the same thing with people that aren't in the West, that aren't our allies. If you went through exactly what they went through from birth to that point in time, and that's all you ever knew, there's a good chance you would be that way. You would think that way. I'm not saying for sure. It's just that's how you open your mind up to it. And so when you have compassion and you're like, oh, okay, I can understand why you're like that. And so the forgiveness comes for that. And when you forgive, you alleviate yourself of this hatred and anger that you've been carrying around for you. And it's really good for you. So you got to learn to, I know it sounds all mushy and stuff, but you got to learn to love yourself. And you do it for yourself. And the more compassion that you have, the more willingness you have to try and understand why someone is doing what they're doing, is going to allow you to be a much happier person. Anyway, that's it. This was actually longer than I wanted to do, but kind of an important topic. If you got any other aspects of life or things that you're interested in and you want to hear me talk about, put it in the comments below. I read all the comments. I don't always respond to all of them. I do have another channel and a family and stuff like that, but I do sit at night. You'll see me if I do like a heart, Life with Neil's hearting, that's because I read it. And I don't always respond, but I do read every single one of them. Just know that. Or at least if you see that heart. If it's like weeks later and I'm not on that video anymore, maybe I might miss it. So my apologies if that's the case with any of you. Hope you guys have a great day and don't get so angry. If you do, it's okay. Just don't let it ruin your day and don't let it turn you into a giant a-hole. Okay? See you guys.